And now, a stealth Muslim in action. And he's Irish, so I'll give him an Irish accent. No more of this. No more talking like this. Because I'm going to let him... Because, I do believe he is Irish, I think he's telling the truth here. But I also think he's a stealth Muslim. So, I'll show you why. Alright. Still no answer to my question. Which is... Yes, the Qur'an, Talmud, Torah, and Bible all condone slavery, and I lay out the rules by which you are to treat your slaves, a sign of the times in which the men who wrote these texts lived. I asked you to provide me an example of Muslim human trafficking today. Why today, and not when it sent blacks to the Americas? Slavery is not an institution, as far as I am aware, in the Middle East. Did I say it was? At least not as a legal institution. However, officially in the U.S. and the rest of the Western world, a thriving slave trade exists, with little to no hindrance from the authorities. And if that's bad, what do you think of Islam's view of it? It's okay then, true? Yes, there's a pathetic attempt by law enforcement to curb the slave trade. At the same time, governments turn a blind eye by giving deals and handouts to the very organized crime organizations that run these slave trade markets within the US, Canada, and most of Europe. Who owns slaves in those places? Cite me an example of the same happening in Muslim countries and by Muslims or Muslim organizations. I'm not aware of slavery anywhere right now, and I don't see what this has to do with Qur'an 424 not removing African American complaint for the time the U.S. had slavery, if the Qur'an is true. Still, ye have my curiosity up with slavery in the U.S., Canada, and Europe. Who owns slaves in those countries? That is what I ask. Not more misinterpreted archaic scriptures from holy books. How were the scriptures from the Qur'an and sayings from the Hadith that I sent you misinterpreted? Do you know the original Arabic to put how it really is supposed to sound in English, if they are misinterpreted? I mean in real life, not theoretical theology. Isn't Islam seen as real life to nearly 2 billion Muslims? That is, of course, your interpretation. However, in most fundamental religious sects, and even the majority of Christian sects, a wife is considered to be possessed by a man. That scripture you quoted, part of, says to be nothing of slavery. What if it does? Well, you still desperately try to defend Islam being African American. At this time, I thought he was African American. I got it confused with this other stealth Muslim who was African American, one of his friends. Okay. Save the inherent slavery and oppressive style marriages. It says men are forbidden from fornication or touching another man's wife. But if the man's wife is the slave of a Muslim slave master, guess what? That's what I got out of that scripture. And the other scriptures from the Qur'an and sayings from the Hadith I sent you, what of them? Though the slavery part he inferred may be intended, it is. Given the time in which it was written, it's not to be followed anymore? How is Qur'an 424 not to be followed anymore? If so, how do you know? no different from the 10 rules of slavery laid out to the Hebrews in the Bible. There are some disturbing sounding verses in the Bible on slavery, but where in the Bible, what the Qur'an says is the book that makes people the book, Christians and Jews, and that the Qur'an says is confirmed by the Qur'an. Well, where does it say in the book, Bible, that a Hebrew or Christian man can have sex with his slave girls even if they are married to someone else? Can you provide said scriptures? And then he says that I admit you are very good at evasion. He thinks I'm good at evasion. Oh, it's funny. You know, everything he accuses me of, he does himself. You'll find out later in this series. Okay, then I say, yeah, I will admit you are very good at evasion. How have I evaded? Who is doing the evading when questions are asked? The Quranic scriptures, yes cited, does not seem to refer to slavery in any way. And if they do, would you quit desperately trying to defend the Quran? If they were, you know, if I have it right, and you extrapolated it in the extreme. Oh, how? How did I extrapolate it to the extreme? The scriptures you cited seems to me to be referring to marriage, adultery, and dowries. If so, are you saying a slave girl married to another can have two husbands if she is of the right hand possessed of the Muslim slave master? But what about her non-Muslim husband? What if he objects? What if he objects to that? It's not slavery. And again, if it's revealed to you that it is slavery, would you, as an African American, continue to desperately defend the Quran? And I don't even know how you get to that conclusion that it is slavery, because I'm not Muslim, nor do I understand how you relate a scripture about marriage to be one of African slaves. You really don't read what I send you, do you? Where did I say it was about African slaves? Now, as far as modern slave trade, if you took the time to read my previous quotes, you would have noticed the references to the thriving underworld human trafficking market in the US and Europe, as well as Asia, which you feel is evil, true? But since you secretly defend Islam, you can't bring yourself to admit that Islam supports not only slavery, but sex with married slaves, true? You refer to the evil of an intangible ideology. It's not evil? Islam is not evil? Despite the great evidence to the contrary. Oh? What great evidence? You think Quran 9, 1 through 5, where peace treaties can be broken after sacred months, tells them to rise up and kill polytheists until they become Muslims. You think Quran 9:29, which tells them to kill Christians and Jews, Quran 9:30, Quran 9:100, which says to kill and be killed in the cause of Allah, Quran 8:67, which says it's not forbidden for a prophet to take captives until he's done a great slaughter in the land. You think those things aren't evil? How come? I'm trying to continually return every question back to your gross misinterpretation of fragments of scripture from a holy book. Holy? That you already condemned before reading. And if I did read it and found it to be evil, satanic, and with Qur'an 4:24 removing African American complaint for the time the U.S. had slavery, what then? By the way, did you know you are communicating like a jihadi of the pen? I've met many of them. I must admit, you're smarter than most of them. So, of course, your interpretation of all the scriptures from said book is colored by your predisposition. Again, what if they aren't? What if I'm right in my analysis of them? It isn't the holy books that I condemn. Certainly not the Qur'an, I see. But the organizations that use those books and teachings pervert their original intentions. How is Qur'an 9, 1 through 5, Qur'an 9, 29, Qur'an 30, Qur'an 9, 111, and 4, verse 34, which, Qur'an 4, verse 34 allows a Muslim slave master, a Muslim husband to beat his wife, even just fears rebellion from her, and Qur'an 8, 67, perverted. How do they originally sound? Can you post how they are originally to sound? By the way, you know so much about the Qur'an, defend it desperately. How come you aren't as you claim, which is a Muslim? And then he says this. Well, you know something? I think I'll continue. I think I'll stop it right here and continue it in the next video. Bye.